Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca, and as a high performance mental trainer, I help skaters to train their minds so that they can efficiently perform their best, build their confidence, and control competition nerves. And I have the pleasure of being here today with Nguyen. He is the World Junior Champion from 2014, two-time national champion, and also he has won a national championship at every level from juvenile all the way up to senior. So I thought that was kind of a cool fact. I loved watching him fight this season, and after competition after competition, he was going out there and he was really laying down some great performances, and really fighting. And to me, that's a very admirable quality. Many of you probably don't know, but he has had quite a long career, skating career, even though he's only 21.
21, yeah.
21, yeah. And so there's a lot more skating for him to do. When the season ended this year, the skating season ended, I just thought I need to talk to Nam and ask him about his mental game and what he's doing. So welcome, Nam.
Thank you very much. Super excited to be here.
Great. So I have a few questions for you that I want to kind of focus on, specifically mental, emotional. Performance is 90% mental. So I wondered if you do any mental training or have worked with a sports psychologist.
I have not worked with a sports psychologist. Um, in terms of mental training, I don't think I've done any kind of mental training. Like I've never like meditated or do anything. I kind of just approach whatever the situation comes across my mind in the time. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think in my career, I've never really had that opportunity to work with anyone else to help me kind of train my mind.
Okay. And so, with your coach now, Robert Burke, does he focus at all on any sort of mental aspects or mindset strengthening tools when you're training, even on the ice?
Um, I think he's just more, yeah. I mean, like at this point in my career, I find like I don't have to have like work too much on like the technique of my skating.
Sure.
Um, Specifically, it's more so just kind of keeping my mind calm, and that's what Robert's great at is he's helping me um, try to be calm on a daily basis because practices for me are like really hard. It's practices are harder than competitions just because you have to deal with the daily fatigue, the emotions, and the unknown circumstances if they ever come up, right? So and that's where Robert's great at. He's kind of just he knows my mind better than I know my own mind. So he tells me a lot of these things to kind of think about and just take some time to reflect on it at the end of the day, just to understand a little better of how my mind operates. And it wasn't even until like this season where I started paying more attention to how I started to think. Whereas in the past, like the past few years, I kind of just didn't really put too much thought into what I would do. And so I would just throw myself into it. And then before those few years ago, like when I was like kind of like doing okay, so in 2014, 2015, and even before that, I didn't even have to think because everything was so easy. It would just come to me, and I was able to like deliver on the elements like super easily. But now when you start to grow up, you go through puberty, you start to develop a brain, and you start to develop the thinking part,
Mhm.
right? So that kind of threw me off for the last few years, and now this year, Robert's been he's pretty much like guided me to the space where I'm super comfortable today.
That's great. So I know you've really had incredible success at such a young age, and so early in your career. And how do you think this has shaped you as an athlete? I mean, you've already kind of said that, it was easy for you at the beginning. And so you just kind of threw yourself into things and everything came very natural. So you clearly had a lot of raw talent. How do you think this early success shaped you in your skating career today?
Right. Um, I mean, there's like some good things and bad things to it. Uh, Starting with the good, I mean, it helped me, be aware of what it's like to be at a competition, under a high stress situation, I was able to get my jumps early on. And so like in the back of my mind, I already know like how every jump feels, even though I'm not feeling the greatest mentally or physically. Um, However, the bad side to kind of developing like to, you know, what I was able to do in the past and then how it affects me today is that it puts so much expectations onto my shoulders that I started expecting way too much. So like when I first started growing or going through puberty, I was so impatient with myself, and I would always think about what I was able to do back then, and that just frustrated me even more because um, I like the first time I landed a double axle was like 8 years old, and when I was 13, I started growing and my legs started getting longer. And I remember this one session I spent about 35 minutes trying to get a double axle because I didn't even know where my legs were or what my arms were, where my arms were. So it was a huge struggle for me. And I think being able to do stuff like at such a young age, it's great, but for me it also puts a lot of pressure because I'm like I feel like I'm expected to be doing that, right? Um, and that was like also at a time where I was like super impatient with everything and I
Mm.
expected to be doing things like that. But now that I've kind of like matured a little bit, I can understand that, everything takes time. And what I was able to do back then has no effect on what I do today.
That's a really good point. It seems like you're living more in the moment and trying to
Exactly.
be more
Yeah.
present now. And I think expectations is a big part of every skater's struggle.
Right.
And like you said, once you kind of get into those teen years and you start to go through puberty, it's like your whole life changes. You're not just you out there having fun. It's like, well, now I'm representing my coach and my club and my country and all of these things. And so you start to feel the weight of all of that.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah.
And
It was so stressful too because when you're like from the ages of 8 to 12, let's say, for me, I was just, as you said, like focused on my own. I didn't care about whatever was happening around me. And then when I started going through puberty, that not only does it affect your, physical changes, it affects your mentality. And so I started like paying attention to every little thing outside of my, ring. And some were good, most were pretty bad. I mean, like I started overthinking like, oh, maybe this person is like, hardcore judging me for what I'm wearing, and that kind of like broke my confidence. And that's where it starts, I think, is that confidence level is, if it's not to where you want it to be, it kind of just it's so hard for you to get into that comfortable zone where you know that you can just do your work. And that was such a big battle for a couple of years, is that I needed to learn to like stop caring um, about the irrelevant things in life. And that was like my biggest issue back then.
mm,
And then today is like I've now learned that I don't have to care. I honestly like what like literally anything that happens is like it just goes over my head, um, which is a great thing, but also a bad thing because that also because like if you get to know me well, I get pretty zoned out. And it's not like I'm trying to offend anybody, but also like I'm just trying to like really stay in like my own space, because I'm still competing, right? So I want to guarantee that I'm in a good space mentally and physically, but also like my poor brain can't really handle a lot of like the things that's happening. Where back then it was so easy for me to pick up on everything, and then that would just kind of affect me psychologically, and then it would just be such a hard battle to fight with.
So do you think that you've like adopted a certain strategy that's helped you to not care about those things and not focus on the things going on around you? Or has that just been sort of an evolution? How did you get to this place that where you're just like,
So nobody like when I was growing up, no, like before I came to Robert, nobody really kind of taught me how to deal with all the negative aspects going on, right? And so I think it was just more so of me having to go through that whole phase And then when I got to Robert, he was like doing things that I was not really used to. So like if I was ever having a bad practice session, he would come up, cut me off, and look me in the eye. And I hate eye contact so much. I hate it. But he doesn't care. And he forced me to lock into his eyes, and he would just stare at me. And I would feel so uncomfortable. But that's him just scanning me, scanning my presence of that day, and just analyzing what's going on. And he would know what was going on then. And so it wasn't more of what he would say, but more of what he did. Right. And now I have no problems, looking him in the eye, because like I can trust him 100% in whatever my issues were in that time. But in terms of how did I get to the point of letting things come over my head, I honestly think that it just started off with like and it's like not really the greatest way of getting into it, but uh you deal with like a couple of people that are a little bit too much, let's say,
Mhm.
right? And you have to see them on a daily basis. And if you're not having a good day, the best thing to do is just shut your brain off and close and just kind of just do your own thing. And that's what I've been doing. And I think like for me that was like the perfect strategy. Maybe not the greatest analogy, but the strategy in terms of if there's something happening like outside that's just extremely bothersome to me, all I have to do is just turn that brain off and just focus focus hardcore on my own presence or my own being, staying in the moment. And it's so funny because at Stars on Ice we do this icebreakers event, and these kids have the opportunity to ask us questions. And a couple of these parents took that opportunity as well, and they asked me like, what is it an advice that you can give to the young skaters? And I always tell them, stay in the moment. uh, don't get hung up on the past. Don't overthink about the future. Invest everything into the present moment, because before you know it, it'll be gone so quick. And for me, that's worked tremendously well this season. And it's that whatever comes into my mind or whatever I'm working on, that's the only thing that matters to me. Not just in skating, but in life too, or even in school, where that mentality has kind of helped me out. So um, I've gone through a lot of negative, whatever, and positives too. And I think all of those experiences have kind of taught me of how to approach certain situations. So yeah.
That's amazing. That's one of the big skills that I teach as a mental trainer is being in the moment and not getting caught up in the future or the past.
Yeah.
And often how I teach that is by using keywords. So, you repeat a technical keyword to yourself and you're going into a triple axel, and then none of the other stuff can get in there, right? Like you won't think about, oh, the last time I tried the triple axel and I fell, or what if this happens, this kind of thing. And so do you use keywords, or do you use certain strategies to get yourself like to block the past and the future and to just get into the moment?
Mm,
Or you just tell yourself, okay, get in the moment?
yeah. No, well, it's very different for some kinds of situations. So like if I'm going into a jump, right? Like let's say quad toe.
Yeah.
And if I'm not having, a good session with it, and like I'm really determined to get like maybe 3 done on a session, in order for me to get into the moment, as you said, I actually do use keywords. Like I'm gonna say like straight back, straight in, and go up. So referring to like my free leg drawing back instead of coming around, I drop back. Straight in meaning I pick, and then going up is up. So I repeat those several times, and even when I'm going into the jump, I will actually like say it while I'm doing it, and I find that helps a lot. In terms of life, let's say if I'm having a depressing day or whatever, I think the best thing for me to do is kind of identify objects. So let's say, chili peppers. Like I'm
Mhm.
identifying that to help my brain narrow in on chili peppers. And then I'm going to start doing that to like my phone or lunch or something, because your mind can start paying attention to people or like the busy lifestyle that's happening around you. So the best thing for me to do is just identify I'm in an interview with, with you, Rebecca, or I'm looking at my laptop. I think it's weird for other people, but for me, it helps me drill into that little piece of item or whatever, and that helps me, stay present. So that's kind of my thing
Absolutely.
right now.
You're like the guru. How do you know this stuff, Nam?
Yeah, honestly,
You
yeah.
have to
As I
mental
said,
skating.
like
How do you know this?
even like this season, I I found out, like looking, like reflecting back on my season, um, I think most of what I've done now is based on self-learning, like experience. And unfortunately, I'm the type of person that I have to actually go through with a tough lesson to actually be able to learn from it. I mean, there's only so much that, my parents or Robert can tell me. Like, yes, they're supposed to like help me. They're guiding me through whatever I'm going through. But for example, like I'm changing techniques on a sow cow, right? So this was like in last summer, and the technique I had before was fine, and I grew up my entire career doing that certain technique. But then I decided, you know what? If I wanted to guarantee the consistency rate to go up for this jump, I need to change it. And Robert has been telling me a couple of times that I should like look into that, but I never really registered it until I actually took the time to invest into learning about it, watching videos, and just really feeling it. So it took me about like 2 days to actually get it done. But yeah, that's one example of how I operate as a human being, is that I actually have to go through the tough the tough things to learn what it's all about. And that's something that Robert always teases me about, is that he says I rarely ever listen to him. And I always have to like make the mistake, and then I'll actually learn from it. But he's totally cool with it, because he knows that I'm also at a point in my life where it's not just about skating anymore, and I have to learn about how to be a human
Yeah,
outside of skating. And so he's always there for me. But that's our dynamic for our relationship.
that's great. And I think to me it seems like you're very intuitive and insightful. Like you have a good understanding of who you are and what makes you tick, and that's so important because what works for you is not going to work for everyone else, but everybody has to figure out what works for them. And absolutely, mindfulness, being in the moment, whether it's going on a walk and listening to the birds singing, feeling the way that the ground feels under your feet, noticing objects in the environment, right? That's a form of mindfulness. There's a form of mindfulness I teach called mindful stroking, which is that beginning warm up when you're stroking around.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking about all the things that you're going to do that day,
Right.
it's focusing on how the temperature in the arena on your skin, the way the sound of your edges cutting through the ice, like all that sensory stuff.
Of course, yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Oh,
as you like, it's so important to like just ground yourself, and
mm,
like, wake up your senses. And that's so funny you said about that stroking thing. Like every session I do, like I don't really stroke a lot, but when I actually do, I pay so much attention to the rip, to that ripping sound
yeah.
that my blades make. And that itself like calms me so much, because we're so consumed with everyday life that it overwhelms you to an extent, right? But then when you come into the rink, even dealing with people there can be a little bit overwhelming. But
Mhm.
once you're on that ice and it's just you, I think that's the greatest feeling ever. And as cheesy that may sound, I think it's the actual truth. Where sure, the music's playing, you have other skaters around you, but fortunately for me, I'm able to just zone in on just my right foot making that nice, beautiful carving edge,
Mhm.
and then that just sets up the tone for my session. And so then once I'm into it, like there's nothing stopping me. Like I've got my horse blinders on, I
Yeah.
just see whatever's in front of me, and I get the job done. So yeah.
Yeah, and really that feeling of stroking around and carving those edges out, like I remember that was like probably one of the best feelings. That's what brought me to skating. Like that was where the love began. And
Yeah.
so I think for a lot of skaters, once we get caught up into you know, the competing and the expectations, we sometimes lose that love
Mm-hmm.
for skating. And that was actually a question that I was going to ask you was, it seemed like this season you really rekindled your love for skating, and you've taken on the responsibility of your skating You are paying your bills, and it's your decision now.
Yeah.
How do you think that that has impacted your skating this season?
So much. I mean, I was like gonna stop after last season,
Yeah.
and um, in my mind it was like a battle because I didn't want to be telling people I left skating just because I didn't make it past the show program at a world championships. And then my other half was like, it was done. It was just I was just too stressed out. I was bummed, like I didn't make it into the team. It was like I think less than a point that I was off the team by. So that kind of hurt a little bit. But I there's this other thought that just kind of like made its way into my brain and was like, I've never had that opportunity to take on this sport on my own terms because I've always done it based on, how my parents wanted it to be or how my coaches wanted it to be. And it was rarely a time when I would do it on my own terms. So I sat on it, spent maybe a couple of weeks just thinking about what it would be like. And then I was like, and I told my parents, like, I'm going to go for one more season. And they were like, if you're going to go for one more season, well, you can, but we're not going to be able to help you out anymore because skating is way too expensive, right? So I was like, fine. And so um, I asked Robert for, a coaching job. And I also worked at the figure skating boutique. Shout out to them. But all of that just to help pay for it. And I get funding from Ski Canada. Like it helps, it helps a lot too. But also I feel that I needed to have a job so that I would understand the responsibilities. And I think so far to this day, I have no regrets of my situation because not only does, taking on everything by yourself, you know, give you that sense of responsibility and ownership, I think that it helps you mature in a way. And I think for me, especially, it gave me this like appreciation of what my parents have done for me because I never really understood the concept of money or how important it was when my parents were paying it because I didn't have to pay anything, right? So to get my own check from a workplace is so awesome, but then that has to go into skating, right? And so that just that factor itself helped me understand how important it is to save every dollar or how important it is that I need to invest everything into skating in order for me to have that to be successful in my own terms. Winning doesn't mean you're successful. I think, um, you know, I think that's like a saying that is so important. It doesn't really matter how many medals you've won. What matters is the process into it and the people that you surround yourself with. And I did a little keynote with a speech or something on the weekend, and I was talking to them about that the process leading up to the outcome I find is more valuable than anything else in the world because you're in that process on a daily basis. And I had Robert by my side, I have RTC by my side, and they helped me so much get to where I am today. Um, and so that kind of gave me another sense of appreciation for people outside of my family. So uh, in terms of what I've done this season, I'm so happy. I mean, I could have probably done a slightly better job at my Grand Prix or maybe even at the World Championships, but like that doesn't really that's so minor because I'm just so pleased with how I've handled everything in terms of being a coach, working at the store, and balancing all of that with school and skating. That I think for me that's a big up, and I can't wait to do that again for this upcoming season.
Well, you seem to have such a good handle on like perspective. So looking at skating in the big scheme of things.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm sure that that has really helped you because you have more of a sense of balance now
yeah,
in your skating and your life.
yeah, yeah. It's so important. Balance is so
Yeah.
important. I just finished first year at university, and like before that, I took 2 years off of school just to focus on the Olympics. At first, it was great because I didn't have to worry about school. I didn't have to worry about anything. I just go to the ring, from the ring, and then home. That's it. But then it got so unhealthy because everything revolved around skating, and then it was driving me to like a point in my mind where I was like bored and insane, and it was just. And then when I did make the Olympic team, that's when it just hurt so bad because like I felt like I put a lot into it, which in actuality I didn't. Looking back at it now, like it just got it's not healthy to focus everything into one aspect of your life without having other things to fall back on. And now that I'm in school, I think I'm so grateful to be in school and to skate at the same time, because if I ever have a bad day at the rink, it's not a big deal anymore. Like I know I have another session or have the next day to do it, and I can go to school and see people that don't even know that I'm a skater, and we can still vibe off of each other, which is great. So yeah, balance is important. Stay in school, kids.
That's great. And you mentioned just about like having your RTC family, that's Richmond Training Center, and Robert, and it seems like that you found your forever home. And I know that in your skating career, you've kind of moved around and you've had different coaches and different clubs. And how do you think that affected sort of your confidence or any part of your skating early on?
Right. Yeah. So I mean, RTC is like the longest I've been at the club since the cricket club.
Yeah.
And in between those two clubs, I moved around. I moved to California
Mhm.
and I moved to YRSA, with many different coaches in between, right? So, uh, I I mean, I've learned a lot from them.
Mhm.
Like they've taught me techniques and all that. But I don't think I was with them long enough for them to tell me about experiences outside of skating, right? So I can't really say that it was the greatest thing. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, Rebecca. It was so overwhelming just bouncing around from coaches and clubs, and
Yeah.
I just didn't feel like I had enough time to settle into what I would call a home, and that's something that I did with the cricket
Mm.
and now at RTC. Um, Honestly, like on a daily, my conversations with Robert were pretty much like, what's happening? Well, like, how am I feeling? Um,
Life.
exactly, just life in general. Because skating is like
Yeah.
that, and then and the world is like
Yeah.
that. It's huge, right? So, um, yeah, bouncing around from different clubs, different coaches, it was great in a sense, but like at the end of the day, when I look back on it, it was just so stressful because it, a lot of changes, right? And I'm not really great with changes, but that's something that you have to deal with in life as a human being, and the ability to adapt is so important. And back then, I didn't have that ability,
Mm.
so it took me a while to like adjust from one coach to the other. And then by the time I was about to settle down, something came up, and I would have to,
Go somewhere else. Yeah.
dip, right?
Mhm.
So
And so, I mean, there's a lot of skaters that are struggling with maybe their current coaching situation and maybe feel, a lot of skaters feel like they can't move or they can't change or, and when do you know like it's right to make that change? Or is there like a time is there something that you knew that it was time to make that move? I mean, you were quite young, so you probably didn't have a lot of choice in that, but.
yeah, so unfortunately, I don't have an answer in terms of when would be the right time, and I'm saying this because uh, when I decided to move to California, that was actually based on my own decisions, but the reasons for it were not correct.
Sure.
Uh, and then when I moved to YRSA, that was actually because of my parents, and I'm not throwing my parents under the bus because I think making the move from San Jose to YRSA was actually the correct decision because I actually get to be back at home with my
Mhm.
family, and so just being at home there was great. Uh, but and then moving from YRSA to RTC was also my parents' decision too. Again, not throwing them under the bus, but I think what they did was great. They did it out of their for the best interest of myself and out of love because they care about me so much. Um, have I been in a situation where I wanted to know when the time is right for a move? No, I've never been, and I don't see any reason now for me to move from RTC because I plan to retire with them by
Yeah.
my side. But I think with the limited advice that I can give in terms for this question, I think is you got to just trust your gut.
Yeah.
There's
Mhm.
not a lot of things that you can kind of rely on in terms of the quantity aspects of it. Like you can't look at a certain something and be like, oh, it's time to move. No, I mean it's a vibe. Like if you
Yeah.
if you and your coach aren't really connecting as well as you guys were in the past, either try to strengthen that bond, or
Mm.
trust your gut and leave somewhere else. So
Yeah. I think the bond is really important because you obviously have a very good bond with Robert.
yeah, I
That's
mean, I
fostered.
that bond with Robert, I think,
Mm.
is just incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
I've just we've worked for over a year now, and every lesson, every minute that we spent together, there's no regrets because he's been there through thick and thin, been there on my greatest and my worst days, and I can't thank him enough for that. So he's an incredible individual to work with, and I also see him as pretty much my second dad because
Yeah.
he's been there like just outside of skating and helping me get through some issues in my life.
That's great. I just have one more question. I noticed that when you perform, like I said, you get in the moment, you're very focused. Um, you're putting the emotions to the side. Like sometimes I'll see you express your emotions a little more in the kiss and cry, but when you're on the ice, it's like very professional. And, I was wondering about your strategy for if you go out and you pop a jump, right? Like I know at World Team Trophy, you popped the quad toe at the beginning and I was like, uh-oh. And then you just did a great performance after that. It was like it never even happened. So how did you move past that, like, pop or mistake early on to like get through the rest of the program and still make it great?
So popping, like, I mean, you jumped yourself in the past, right? So popping, I think to any skater, when you pop and you land that pop, it's like the worst feeling ever. Like your stomach's about to turn, and you're like, well, for me, like anger comes up. It's like, but that's in the past though. But like this season, like I've learned to kind of deal with it better, and um, so here's how this whole situation with it began or started out. I'm working on a program, or I'm doing my run throughs, and I never ever missed the first jump. And this was before I added the toe, so it was just two sows in the beginning. And sows are my jump, or the jumps that I'm actually quite confident in terms of whatever. And so if I ever pop the jump, I actually will stop and rewind. That
Mhm.
was in the first half of the season. However, I don't remember which competition it was, but I fell on one of the sows, and then I botched the rest of the program. I come back home and I'm like, that can't happen anymore. Like in practice, I can restart however many times as I want, but in competition, you can't restart. And it was unfortunate that I missed one of the first two jumps. And so I made it a thing to practice it, even if I pop or fall, if or fell on one of the jumps. I have to continue because I need to put myself in this situation where I'm in a high stress circumstance and nothing goes my way, but I still have to get it done. um, Thankfully, I just pop because falling, like my whole body's just being tossed onto the ice, and it's not the greatest feeling ever. So I still have to work with that. But popping is slightly easier to deal with because I landed the jump, but like just mentally, it kind of throws you off a teeny bit. But at World Team Trophy, when I popped that toe, I was like, I didn't think too much of it. I actually I like three cross cuts after I already forgot about it, and I'm going into the rest of the program thinking it starting from step one. Um, but in terms of like what I can say for other skaters, I think that you just have to practice that at home. It's something that you can't deal with at a competition. You can do like 10 out of 10 clean programs at home, but when you get to a competition, and your mind is like not about it, and you pop or you fall, that's something you can't actually deal with on the fly unless you have that ability to kind of just take whatever comes across your face and you just have to smack it out. But for me personally, no, it doesn't work like that. So I actually embrace the mistakes that I made at home so that I know that I have something to fall back on at competition if I ever cross that line.
Mhm.
So no, like did it affect me? Not at all. I mean, was I upset about it? Yes. I mean, World Team Trophy was a perfect opportunity to add that toe back in because I took a long break from it.
Yeah.
Since like I'm a little mental with it, but now I'm fine with it. Like I've kind of turned it into a game with this jump. Is like I've done it every day on Stars and Ice practice just to make sure that I know the feeling of it. And so yeah, I like and now like the this upcoming season, my goal is to put it back into my short and long.
Mhm.
Um, and it honestly just boils down to practice because no matter how talented you are, if you skip out on the practices, you can only get so far. And I think that's what I did in the past. Like, I'm not trying to come off as braggy or cocky or whatever, but I knew like back then, like I was pretty much riding on talent because like everything came so easy to me, but like I never invested the practice sessions. And that didn't really get me at first, but it started nipping me in the butt further down my career. And now like I'm just so involved with just working hard, you know, putting the emotions aside, getting down to the bare bones of it all, and just doing my best each practice. It doesn't mean that I do 25 quad sows, 25 quad toes a day. It means that I'm able to get through a practice session, um, no matter what kind of emotions or issues I'm dealing with. But just a matter of going through the action and knowing, and then deep down, you know that you were able to do it. You don't have to do it in a spectacular fashion, but being able to handle all of the mental drama that your brain decides to put you through, um, I think that's the real battle right there. And to be if you're able to conquer your mind, then you can conquer anything. And I'm starting to get a taste of what that is. And I can't wait to further improve my mentality or my mental strength along with my physical strength for this next season.
Brilliant. Well, I think that that is the perfect way to end this interview. Thank you so much for sharing your insight. I think that so many skaters can learn so much from your journey, and I'm excited to share this with the world.
Of course.
And I can't wait to watch you next season and to see how far you can go again and keep pushing towards hopefully next Olympics, right? So, one
Yeah,
season at a time.
absolutely. One season at a time. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my thing right now. I think just before tour started, I actually decided that I was going to do another season because I put everything into that last season, right?
Yeah.
And I was so happy with how it went that I want to do it again, but in a more refined way. So I've done I've created the foundation, the base work, whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
And now that I have a general idea of what I want to do, I actually want to be able to invest more into school, into skating, and my work, uh, and see where that takes me. And if by the end of this season I don't think I'd be able to do it anymore, that's more than fine because
Yeah.
I know that I'm happy with myself with that.
That's great. Thank you, Nam.
Thank you very much.